let's see. Paranoia has consumed the Republicans, basically, or the Republicans. Now, the idea that history is recurrent is one of the most powerful in Western society. From the halls of Harvard to characters on Battlestar Galactica reciting, all this has happened before, and all of this will happen again. It can feel like we're living in an unprecedented times in the United States with the rising fascist movement led by a fake reality TV star, but it's not to be so. While the reality TV part is novel, in his new book, The Midnight Kingdom, A History of Power, Paranoia, and the Coming Crisis, and the author who wrote it, Jared Yates Sexton, roots the delusional thinking that drives Trumpism in a long history of the world, where people often sink into paranoid fantasies in order to justify their worldview of what they're seeing. Now, Sexton spoke with Salon about how the toxic rejection of reality that we're all witnessing now has long been an unpleasant future for human societies, and how hopefully we can learn from this to do a better job in fighting back in our current moment that we're facing. And but the interview had been edited for clarity and length. Basically, in the book, there was anecdotes about the power that paranoid Christian belief had over families, and especially Yates Sexton's grandmother when he was growing up, and how much did the background inform your desire to write about the influence of conspiracy thinking on the American right? Completely, basically, I mean completely. He grew up in a really problematic. He said he grew up in a really problematic radicalized environment. And basically, he watched over the past few years, not just about QAnon, but with the rise of the Christian nationalism and the conspiracy theories that they were telling themselves. It was very familiar. It was something that he basically used to think was contained within the family, or within his community, or within his church. And what he had come to realize over the past couple of years is that extremist thinking has found purchase not just with a political party, but with literally millions, if not tens of millions, of Americans and people around and people around the world. No, it is, and I'll be frank, scary as fuck. The things that I had grown up with, or that he had grown up with, and that he had heard his family and community talk about, it's starting to hold sway over the political process and possibly over in the future. Basically, Yates Sexton said that his family wasn't all like that, but he grew up in a community with a lot of evangelical Christians who would talk about the end of the world, the beast, and 666 and shit like that. And he says, I barely believed that. He's like, I barely believed that they believed it, but now it's all on the mainstream news stuff. Basically, his childhood was marked by incredible dysfunction and abuse. On top of that, a terror that is almost hard to communicate to people. When you take a look at these ideas and these conspiracy theories, one of the things you start to fucking realize is that if you believe these things, if these actually build the world around you, or the way that you interact with politics, or even your neighbors, or your day-to-day life, you're going to be living in the literal terror. And when you feel that way, and when you believe that you're going to be in the middle of a supernatural battle, you literally will do anything in order to protect yourself and the people around you. It isn't just the effect that it has on individuals' mental health, but when it becomes the political motivator, history has shown us that it leads to incredible violence, and it hurts our democracy, and it leads to everything from genocide to wars. Now, to watch that become the operating worldview of not just a major political party, but of a worldwide movement, it's really concerning. And the more research that people do about it, the more concerned they became. And a lot of people grasped this concept on January 6th, since it was based on the big lie. But I still, but I, but I, but I, still, but how to put this in a better way? There's still a lack of misunderstanding of how much apocalyptic Christianity fueled what happened that day. When you take a look at the January 6th and the Klan attack that happened, it's really easy to see the Klan insurrection. I think a lot of people dangerously think of it as a one-time event when it could happen again, and they want to believe that we're moved beyond it. But Joe Biden was inaugurated, and Donald Trump seems to be losing some soil over the Republican Party, and they think everything would go back to normal. But when you start to take a look at what actually happened on that ground, you start to realize that the apocalyptic mindset is just the Republican orthodoxy at this point, and it literally says that this is a life or death struggle. The Republicans say that there's a conspiracy theory against them, which there isn't. It's an incredibly powerful, well-resourced sadistic conspiracy. Unless they do everything in their power, it is going to mean the difference between living and dying. Or if you want to take it down the supernatural route, they worry about actually losing their spiritual power or spiritual vitality. It creates a story that these people can use it to carry out previously unthinkable actions, including assaulting people, breaking into public buildings. There's a willingness to carry out full-fledged violence or anti-democratic actions. And when you take a look at it from that standpoint, you start to understand that these stories and these mindsets are precursors to something larger as opposed to being the end of the result of something. Basically, in the book, it states that American history is largely the story of paranoia. But what are we even talking about there? Even starting with the colonialists, they feel like anti-Christian conspiracies were coming after them, and as a result, they needed to leave and find some place for themselves. And then you take a look at the actual American Revolutionary War. Everybody wants to believe that the revolution is a spontaneous uprising of patriotism, but a lot of the appeals were based on conspiracy theories like that England was going to stir up the uprisings among the enslaved population, or that they were going to use Native Americans as an army. Even if you move forward just a couple of years to the first really contested presidential election of 1800, the Federalists said that Thomas Jefferson is an Illuminati conspiratorial agent who was trying to destroy Christendom. The paranoid roots of this country run very, very deep. Now, paranoia is more associated with the right than it is the left. And why do you fucking think that is? From the very beginning of conservatism, it was based on the idea of natural hierarchies, that there is a natural elite that rises to the top of society, and as a result, they should be the ones who run the world and political affairs. This is a leftover from monarchical. Not sure if I'm saying this right. This is a leftover from monarchical thinking. Edmund Burke and others looked at these revolutions and they saw an unnatural leveling. They believed democratic energies were very destructive, so conservatives ascribed these movements to the Illuminati, the Freemasons, and the Jews, supposedly overthrowing society as it should be. But nowadays, never-Trumpers blame all of this conspiracy thinking on Donald Trump himself, right? That everything was fine before Donald Trump came along, but in truth, the origins of that movement are hierarchical thinking that is bolstered and founded in conspiratorial worldviews. And they always couch the hierarchical thinking in an ideology that there is a conspiracy that has to be protected against conservative thinking, always relies on those stories. But there is a widespread misconception out there that there is this meaningful difference between Christian nationalism and the white identity politics. But there are inextricable from one another. We ended up going back to when Christianity merged with the state power and with the Roman Empire. And there are really important parts of Christian mythology that are used by the powerful, and it starts with the Roman Empire, when there is a difference between citizens and barbarians, and later on, between Christians and pagans. Christianity is what provides the story. Basically, the Christianity people believe that they have God on their side, which there is no God, and I have the universe, and other people say I have the universe on my side, but I also have good on my side, and as a result, I should be able to do whatever I need to carry out the invisible ferryman's vision. And that has been inextricable with white supremacy from the very beginning. White supremacists say that they hold possession of so-called Western civilization or the progress of humanity, and that they've been able to say, "Listen, this is what I need to enslave people. This is why I need to colonize people." It allows them to carry out the process that otherwise are indefensible. But because they have that story on their side, they can defend it and tell themselves that story. Even with Trump being out of office, many of us predicted Trumpism only seems to be metastasizing. Trump is a symptom, not a disease. The problems that we are facing right now are the consequences of a cataclysmic crisis in terms of both capitalism and this neoliberal idea that it feels like we're reaching the end of our point. Trump was an opportunist. He never meant anything that he said. Of course he did. He recognized the opportunity to go out and create this faux populist movement of the maggot movement, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. It's merely an expression of something that has taken place with the political and social body that was always going to take place. Trump is the type of person who could take advantage of anything and also turn it into a consumer identity. Trump basically gave people products that they could wear and identities that they would take on, but it prepares people for a more concrete ideology. It's something that's happening all over the fucking world. He created an opportunity for some really wealthy, dangerous people to recognize that the defenses and the democracy weren't there anymore. And Trump was the right figure at the right time, and the one a lot of people were looking for, even though he was a failure at that. Now I'm going to assume that basically Sexton wrote this book mostly when things were looking pretty bleak. And I'm actually really optimistic, and I have been for a while. But sometimes when you take a large look at history, it can feel very crushing. It makes you feel very small and powerless. But the more that I looked at things, the more that I came to realize that there's an incredible number of things that are about to take place and you synthesize into what we're thinking is going to be a generational moment. There's going to be some struggle. There's going to be some ugliness. But I tell you this, I'm very optimistic for a lot of the reasons that we just brought up, and not just Ukrainian resistance. But look at how the regime in China is being challenged. You look at the protesters in Iran. I think Vladimir Putin is reaching a terminal point in his regime. Now you have workers who are piling victories, who are piling on victories against the largest corporations in the history of the world through organizing and labor actions. The illusion of the mediocrity, the illusion of American exceptionalism, and I think those things are all going to fall apart. Now the difference maker here, is whether or not we realize that the window is opening to change the world for the better, or will the authoritarian right wing persuade people that they have all the solutions, and that the solutions are fucking terrible. Their solutions are making people work for cents on the dollar, relegating women to second-class birthday machines, but I think the window is open for a positive generational change. And I think that's where we're going to go. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I do think that this is the direction that we're going to be heading in. But if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube, and for just a little, as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.